Let me share my screen. Okay, can you guys see that?
Yeah, we can. And for
Yes.
every student, feel free to type any question into the chat during the lesson, and or the tutor will answer it after the presentation, or you can speak out if you want.
Okay, so we're going over the Olympics and just the part 2. Basically the events that we spoke of last week. We're going to recount their medals and who won.
So the general information, the link you see at the top is the link to the medal count, which I will show in the next slide. And so some sort rankings decided by the total numbers of medals the country has, but most lists by gold medals counted. However, if 2 or more teams have the same number of gold medals, the silver medals are then judged from the most to the least, and then the bronze medals. So the gold first ranking systems described above is used by most of the world media, as well as the IOC, while the gold first ranking system has been used occasionally by some American media outlets. Newspapers in the United States primarily publish medal tables ordered by the total number of medals won. So this is a screenshot of medal count. I just screenshot this like 5 minutes ago, so this should be up to date. And yeah, this is the top 20. So 339 gold medals are scheduled to be awarded, and however, ties do occur sometimes. So the number of ties for medals in Olympic history is this chart. Like for Summer Olympics, there are 29 gold, 35 silver, and 54 bronze in 114 events and 118 in total. In the Winter Olympic Games, it's 9 for gold, 13 for silver, and 8 for bronze. It's 29 events and 30 in total. If a pair of athletes or 2 teams tie for first place, they each receive a gold medal. No one's awarded for silver, and then the bronze is awarded to the runner-up. Both national anthems will be played if 2 athletes share the gold medal, and the order is random.
Okay, skateboarding. Olympic skateboarding is the new sport added to the Olympic roster. There are 2 categories, men's and women's sports skateboarding. The skateboarding Olympians will have 2 different skateboarding courses to compete in, the park and the street. The park is more open and allows skaters to do more tricks mid-air and get higher into the air. The street has more obstacles skaters can take advantage of by doing various tricks on them. The Olympians are scored off of what trick they do and how well they do it. The Olympians perform 2 45-second runs and 5 tricks, and the tricks are averaged to find their final score. The winners of the men's categories are Horigome Yuto from Japan, who got gold, Hofler Kelvin from Brazil, who got silver, and Eaton Jagger from the United States, who got bronze. And these are pictures of them on the right. And for women's skateboarding, the winners are Nishia Momji from Japan, who got gold, Leal Raisa from Brazil, who got silver, and Nakayama Funa, who's also from Japan, who got bronze. And the cool thing about the winners are the gold and silver medalists are only 13 years old, and the bronze is only 16 years old.
So I'm gonna talk about table tennis. There is a quote that I really like. Table tennis is the most practiced sport in the world and sure to be a must-see attraction at Tokyo 2020. And here is an overview for the table tennis. Table tennis has come a long way from its late 19th century origins as an after-dinner game played by upper-class English families. More than a century later, table tennis has a greater number of recreational recreational players than any other sport, and Olympic level competition is a breathtaking spectacle. And here is the event program and also the result, which I will show in the next slide. The event include our singles, team, and mixed double. Singles match are played over the best of 7 games, with the first player to 11 points by a margin of 2 clear points, winning each game. Can you make it clear, because it's kind of blurry?
Ooh, I'm not sure I can do that on here.
Is that only me seeing this blurry, or other people also see that's blurry?
It seems okay for me.
I also sing clearly.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's my problem.
We could go to the next slide if you can't. See
Yeah,
it.
you can try to skip it, and I will see if my computer recovers.
Can you see this slide?
No, it's still blurry.
Okay, I'll just say it. The results for for countries are China has 2 gold medal. What is it? Oh yeah, okay. So the results for the men were China won gold medal and silver medal, and Germany won bronze. For the women's, China won both the gold medal and silver medal again, and Japan won bronze. And for mixed, Japan won gold, China won silver, and Chinese Taipei won bronze.
Oh yeah. So Conan isn't here today, so I'll just take over for these slides. What he talked about was volleyball. Volleyball is a team sport in which 2 teams of 6 players are separated by a net. Each team tries to score points by grounding a ball on the other team's court under organized rules. A player on one of the teams begins a rally, which is serving the ball from behind the back boundary line of the court over the net and into the receiving team's court. The receiving team must not let the ball be grounded within their court. The team may touch the ball up to 3 times, but individual players may not touch the ball twice consecutively. Volleyball has been a part of the Summer Olympics program for both men and women consistently since 1964. Brazil, United States, and the former Soviet Union are the only teams to win multiple gold medals at the men's tournament since its introduction. The remaining 5 editions of the men's Olympic volleyball tournament were won each by a different country, including Japan, Poland, Netherlands, Russia, and Yugoslavia.
Okay, so this is swimming, which is one of the most well-known Olympic sports. Swimming is an individual or team racing sport that requires the use of one's entire body to move through water. It includes strokes or movements that helps one make their way through the water faster and easier. The strokes include freestyle, backstroke, breaststroke, butterfly, and etc. Swimming is a pretty important sport to learn as it can save the lives of many. Swimming is also played competitively, and as mentioned, it is one of the most popular Olympic sports. Since we're talking about the Olympics, many records were broken, including 4 this year. The US was able to take home 3 of those 4. The main spotlight in swimming so far this year is Caleb Dressel, who has so far won 2 gold medals in his 2 events, which was a 50 freestyle and 100 freestyle. Fun fact, the most successful Olympian of all time is Michael Phelps, who has earned a total of 28 medals throughout his whole career. Out of the 28 medals, 23 of them were gold. Unfortunately, he has retired. He is an idol of many Olympians and swimmers as he is considered one of the best or maybe even the best swimmer in the world. He's an imperative figure as he is the face of competitive swimming.
So next is rock climbing. So if you remember from last week, the Olympics has 3 different kinds of rock climbing. There's speed climbing, which is how fast you can go. There's bouldering, which is like a very short wall. And then there's lead climbing, which is basically a really tall wall and you see how long you can go. A fun fact is that this is the first time rock climbing is featured as a sport in the Olympics. So these winners are like the first ever Olympic winners. So if we go to the next slide, it's where I've listed all the winners for you. So it's divided into men and women along with those 3 different kinds of rock climbing. So for speed climbing, the first place in the men's category is Alberto from Spain. Second place is Tomaya from Japan, and third place is Michael from France. In the women, first place is Alexandra from Poland. Second place is Anouk from France. Third place is Miho from Japan. In the bouldering section, first place for men was Nathaniel from the United States. Second place was Michael from France. Third place was Tomara from Japan. And for the women, first place was Janja from Slovenia. Second place was Brooke from the United States. And third place was Miho from Japan. Now, lastly, for lead climbing, for the men, the first place was Jacob from Austria. Second place was Adam from the Czech Republic. Third place was Duffy from the United States. And for women, the first place was Janja from Slovenia. Second place was Chaehun from Korea. And third place was Jessica from Austria.
Okay, we're gonna wrap up by speaking of the next Olympics, which is the 2022 Winter Olympics. So the location is obviously Beijing in the National Stadium. It's in around like 100 days or so, and the opening is February 4th, 2022, and the closing is February 20, 2022. So Beijing is the first city to host both the Summer Olympics and the Winter Olympics. And during the Olympics bidding, the final candidates was Oslo, Norway, Almaty from Kazakhstan, and Beijing, China. So Norway was the clear front runner who withdrew after application from their parliament for funding was rejected, and Beijing beat Kazakhstan by 4 votes, which is from 44 to 40. So this is the schedule for the next Olympics. The 7 main components is biathlon, bobsledding, curling, ice hockey, luge, skating, and skiing. And this is a total of 107 events. The opening ceremony is, again, February 4th, 2022, and the closing ceremony is February 20th, 2022. So these are our sources, and thank you for listening. If anyone has any questions, you feel free to put in the chat.
Okay, we will begin history soon. And after history, it's science.
And to answer the question in one of the chats, so Olympia is generally it happened every 4 years. So yeah, it also depends on the host country, like Alex said. And yeah, feel free to type any more question into the chat, and history will start in a few seconds.
Okay, hello everybody. So feel free to continue typing questions into the chat. Somebody will answer them. Okay, so next up we have history class. So today's in history we are going to talk about the Zhou and Qin dynasty. This is part 2 of lesson 2 of our ancient Chinese history unit. And there's probably going to be one more lesson in this unit before we start a new unit. And make sure to check out our YouTube channel for lessons of our previous unit, which was Greece and Rome. So here's the brief timeline. Today we are going to go through Zhou and Qin dynasty, which was from 1046 to 207 BC, as you can see on the timeline. Now, the Zhou dynasty was the dynasty after the Shang dynasty, and it is the last hereditary dynasty that fully implemented the feudal system. Hereditary means basically the emperor passes his position to his descendants. So two parts of Zhou period, West Zhou and East Zhou, they have the involvement system, which basically means they assign officials by their ancestry. The closer you are related to the emperor, the higher position you will get. Also, your land will also be larger. You have autonomous, basically means you are free to do whatever you want in your land. And this is hereditary, so your descendants inherit your titles, positions, and land. And the only thing you need to do is to listen to the emperor and offer military cooperation. Based on the most recent findings, the Zhou dynasty was founded at around 1046 BC and ended in 256 BC. It coexisted with the Shang dynasty for many years, living just west of Shang territory. The two states went through times of peace and war. Eventually, the Zhou conquered the Shang, probably in the mid-11th century BC. Their political system relied on a network of alliances with local rulers, especially based on family connections, which is the system we just talked about here. It was somewhat similar to the feudal system of medieval Europe. The original capital was located near present-day Xi'an. They later moved the capital to Luoyang to support the empire. The stability of the ruling arrangement lasted for 200 years. However, eventually it collapsed. The local lords fought for more power, and in the 8th century BC, the political system began to weaken seriously. The emperor's power declined, and the local lords formed into small states and kingdoms. The period of before 771 BC is usually known as the Western Zhou dynasty because the capital was in the west. The period after that was known as the Eastern Zhou dynasty because the new capital was in the east. The Eastern Zhou itself is often subdivided into the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period. In the Spring and Autumn period, China consists of many small states. During the Warring State period, many small states joined or were conquered by other states, forming fewer but larger states. They fought with one another for mastery. Finally, one of these small kingdoms, the Qin, succeeded in conquering the rest of the states. He then established the Qin dynasty, which only lasted for 15 years, but is one of the most important dynasties in Chinese history. And the culture of the Zhou, they had a diverse visual art. And the Western Zhou visual art was basically a continuation of those of the Shang dynasty. It was especially true of their works in bronze. During the Eastern Zhou period, however, unique local traditions developed. At that time, decorations began to include pictorial subjects, which examples of this are hunting scenes and chariots and horsemen. Chariots are basically carts pulled by horses. And as the empire was breaking up, arts and culture was flowering in many different individual states. The remains of many of their capitals have been uncovered, and they reveal great buildings with hard earth floors and walls. And there were also two-story buildings and observation towers. And the philosopher Lao Tzu mentioned a 9-story tower. Only a few paintings on silk remain from the Zhou dynasty. However, written descriptions of paintings discuss their themes. Lakerwares, which were objects decoratively covered with lacquer, which is a liquid that dries to form a coating for wood and metal, included gold and silver inlay, and they became finely developed. Jade ornaments also were used. Jade ornaments and objects were used for ritual purposes, and pottery expanded greatly during the Warring States period. And here are some pictures. So on the left side is a bronze figure of a charioteer, and the right figure is a wood bowl covered in red and black lacquer, which, as we covered earlier, is a coating for wood and metal. During this period, China went through dramatic changes. People began using iron ox-drawn plows and crossbows. A crossbow is kind of, if you don't know what it is, it's kind of like a bow, but it's a bit made a bit differently. It's kind of like horizontal. They took up horseback riding. Farmers produced larger crop yields after large-scale irrigation and water control projects were introduced. Irrigation is basically a system that waters the plants. And the Zhou built new roads and canals. Canals are basically man-made rivers. These changes improved the communication system of the dynasty. And in turn, trade increased and towns expanded. In addition, the Zhou developed coins and began to use chopsticks. They also created the Chinese writing system out of its primitive beginnings in the Shang period. In philosophy, the schools of Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism developed during the Zhou dynasty. Literature flourished with Confucius, Lao Tzu, and other Chinese philosophers. Later generations of Chinese have studied the Zhou dynasty for information on the origin of their civilization. And here is a Eastern Zhou bronze sword. And on the right side is a drinking cup carved from crystal. Both of which are from the Zhou dynasty. Does anybody else want to continue, or?
Yeah, sure. So we have the spring autumn period, or as it's known in Chinese, it's the Cunqiu period. It's named after Cunqiu, revised by Confucius. And the cause of this conflict is because the central government of the Zhou gradually lost its control over the local administrations. As you recalled in an earlier slide, the local governments of the Zhou were highly individualistic, and so many of them would fight for supremacy and dominance in China. And with the excuse of honoring the king and driving off the barbarians, they would start a war. And so there were 5 major states that temporarily ruled most of China. They're known as Qi, Song, Jing, Qin, and Chu. And the main idea of this period was separatist rule. And philosophy actually thrived in this period. Now we take a look at the Warring States period. This is the Zhenguo part of China. In the Warring States period, there were 7 major states. They were known as the Han, Zhao, Wei, Chu, Yan, Qi, and Qin. All 7 were very powerful states that were the remnants of the spring autumn period. And the main idea of this period was to annex other countries or other states. And many reforms happened in each of the states, though most notably the Qin were able to enact many reforms, such as a unified currency, which led to the Qin unifying the entire country by defeating the other 6 states. Now, there are many schools of thoughts in this period. Probably the most important is rule or Confucianism. You had 2 masters, Meng and Confucius, and advocates for rights and music and benevolence and righteousness, emphasizing the function of education and neglecting punishment is the only way for national stability and for people's prosperity and happiness to increase. And it also seeks to make the country and the ruler
and the citizenry to be a country of high morality, rule the country by courtesy, and convince people by virtue. In summary, they're basically do as the ruler commands because the ruler himself is virtuous. Now, we also have Taoism. There are two major masters. We have Lao Tzu and Zhuang. And they believe that the way of nature is in action and that things are naturally transformed. They essentially advocate for the natural way, or it's a way of saying destiny, really. And they argued that the country should be ruled by inaction, not inaction as in doing nothing, but inaction as in adaptation by the way. Also, we have the Mua way. The master was Modi. It was about viewing the other the same as yourself, love others like you do to yourself, like one of the amendments of Christianity. And they say to benefit the country by making friends, and they criticize war for bringing disaster and strife. They wish to represent the wish of the public mass, almost like democracy. And finally, we have Fa, or law. This is also known as legalism. This was the Qin dynasty's major school of thought. And they argue that everyone is equal under the law. And it basically argues that you need a unified destiny and a unified China, naturally, under the control of an autocratic monarchy, which was the Qin. Now, here we have some pictures of the masters of each genre. These are not entirely accurate, but they are pretty good depictions. Most important here is probably Confucius, Han Fei, and Lao Tzu. Although, of course, Mengzi, Zhuang, and Mo are very important as well. Now, the Qin dynasty lasted, as my fellow colleague mentioned earlier, for 15 years, so 221 to 207 BCE. So before the birth, 200 years before the birth of Christ. And the Qin dynasty is very important because it's the first unified Chinese empire in all of China's history. And it established basic administrative systems for the next 2,000 years. It also started imperial dynasties, though that bit is a bit debatable, but the Qin dynasty definitely set the standard. Moreover, they simplified the written Chinese language. They simplified like the system of measurements. They also unified the country with one form of currency. So these are a whole bunch of reforms that the Qin dynasty implemented. And for 5 centuries before the Qin dynasty, China was, of course, divided into many small and competing states. And it was governed by Xiaogong in the 4th century BCE, so 200 years before it's unified. But he had a reformer named Shangyang, who helped make Qin the most organized state at the time and used the school of thought of legalism, which allowed for major reforms and for the conquest of other states. So by 221 BCE, we see that Zhao Zheng, or Qin Shi Huangdi, the first sovereign emperor, came to power. And by 221, he would unite all of China, and he would institute even more reforms based on roads, based on his military, and based on law, agriculture, and medicine. However, Qin rule was not stable because of how harsh Qin Shi Huangdi was. And so his son, or the second Qin emperor, was murdered in 207 BCE, and then within a year, the Han ruled China. And that is the end. Does anyone have any questions? We'll be glad to answer them.
Excuse me?
Yeah, hi, how you doing? What's your question?
How many kings are there in Qing dynasty?
How many kings you said?
Yes.
So the Qin dynasty had 2 emperors. However, the second one was killed while still a boy.
Yep, the second emperor was known to be very cruel, and the Qin dynasty only lasted for 15 years. And when he took over, they basically were overthrown within 3 years. So he wasn't really the emperor for very long. But yes, altogether they have 2 emperors.
And what is the Zhou dynasty known for?
Yeah, so the Zhou dynasty is mostly known for being the dynasty before the Qin, honestly. But the Zhou dynasty basically started what we call now the spring, autumn, and warring states period because of the system, the feudal system that they built.
Yep, they are very important because this is where all of these basically schools of traditional Chinese thoughts developed, and this is also where so it's kind of where a lot of Chinese culture developed. It's kind of like one of the origins of modern Chinese culture.
And we can also back to slide 5. That is also a main reason why it was remembered, since not only China but also in Europe we all they also have this kind of system, like in involvement system, the king says to his family, said like I'm the king, and you and because you are my family member, so I'm assigning you to rule a certain land, and then these family members uh also have their own family members, and they continue to assign their family members, and then the power was spread through all the country, and in this way, like they can make their land bigger and bigger, and this is also a time when the land of China expand very quickly because of this system. But the huge disadvantage of this system is what caused the warring state periods and the spring and autumn period, because um like you assign your grandson to a land, but although your grandson knows you, your grandson's grandson will not know you, because you've already died, and because your grandson's grandson doesn't know you, like he will not listen to you. So in this way you lose your control to your land, and this is very dangerous. It is like suddenly California says, I'm gonna become an independent state, and just start a war with the other states. It is that dangerous.
Thank you.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any other questions? If not, I think we can move on to our next group then.
Yeah, thank you for watching.
Okay, so we have science now, and there will be biology and then chemistry. So biology group. Yeah, you guys can start now. Biology group, maybe Gigi, do you want to share your screen?
Can someone else share screen? Like my computer, like it just can't share screen.
Okay. How about
Okay, so for biology, we're going to be doing the carbon cycle. So the carbon cycle is basically nature's way of recycling carbon atoms, and carbon is a big role for all living things to survive. And the very first step in the carbon cycle is photosynthesis. And photosynthesis is the process where plants and other organisms take in carbon dioxide or CO2 and sunlight to create fuel like glucose or sugar in order to build plant structures. This process of photosynthesis can go on for centuries because it fuels all living things as a source of energy.
The next step in the carbon cycle is decomposition. By mostly using sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, plants can grow. In turn, animals consume food for energy using oxygen and giving off CO2 or carbon dioxide. Alternatively, they die, decay, and decompose, repeating for millions of years. So decomposition is the process of breaking down plants. Over vast periods of time, layers of sediment build on each other. Because of the pressure and heat from within the Earth's crust, this generates fossil fuels. For example, coal, oil, and natural gas, or methane, are some of the common fossil fuels. Over the long term, the decomposition of dead matter generates these fossil fuel products.
After decomposition is respiration, and then and like for like humans, like we like respirate by like either like farting or like burping, and just like humans, animals and plants do it too. So the first definition I'm going to give you is the animal and human respiration is when humans or animals release carbon back into the environment, and like they can like get the carbon from like eating the plants, or like just for humans they can like get it from like eating like animals such as cows, which is shown by by like the top picture. And then the second respiration is plant respiration is when plants release carbon dioxide they receive during photosynthesis, and they usually receive less than the amount of carbon dioxide they receive during photosynthesis.
And the last step is combustion. So combustion happens when an organic material is burned. For example, when fossil fuels are burned, energy is released, and that energy is used to power machines like cars. And a byproduct of combustion or like burning fossil fuels is carbon dioxide. And the carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere and the cycle continues. However, in recent years, there has been too much combustion and a surplus of carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere. The carbon dioxide traps the heat the Earth's temperature is gradually increasing, which is also the cause of global warming. Thank you. That's all we have for biology. Are there any questions?
No.
Okay, and now we'll start the chemistry. And if you still have any question about the biology one, You can type your question into the chat and our teacher will answer them.
All right, I can share my screen. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right, so today we are going to be talking about more bonds and Lewis structures.
To continue off of our lesson from last time, where we already talked about covalent and ionic bonds, another type of intermolecular bond is metallic bonds. And these are just attractions between a positively charged metal ion and the valence electrons it shares with the other ions of the metal, as you can see from the image above. And when with metallic bonds, electrons can move freely around the positive ions. And as a result, these metals are good conductors of electricity because the flow of charge can move within this quote unquote sea of electrons without breaking the metallic bonds that hold them together. And this allows metals to also change shape without breaking. And true metals are pure elements, while alloys are blends of two or more types of metals. And some examples of alloys include steel, bronze, and brass, as you can see from the bottom picture. And just to recap, there are two types of molecular forces, two main types. One is intramolecular, which are the bonds inside molecules, and intermolecular, which are bonds between molecules. And as you can see from the image below, these are hydrogen chloride molecules, and the red dashed lines are the intermolecular attractions because they are between the separate molecules, whereas the black line that you see here, the black solid line, is the intramolecular attraction because this is the bond shared within the molecule.
Okay, so next we're going to talk about intermolecular forces. So as we looked at on a previous slide, intermolecular forces are forces that are acting between molecules. So in the picture below, that would be the vertical short lines between the O and the H. And there are two major intermolecular forces. So one is called a van der Waals force, and the other one is called hydrogen bonding. Okay, so basically the difference between the attractions is what type of molecules they are attracted between. So certain molecules have a charge, a positive or a negative charge, and those molecules are called polar. If they don't have a charge, they're called nonpolar. So van der Waals forces are the attraction between nonpolar molecules. It's really weak. It happens for maybe 1 second and then it will disappear and reform over and over again. And next, we're going to talk about hydrogen bonds. Now, don't get mixed up between hydrogen bonds and hydrogen. These two don't have much to do with each other. Hydrogen is a molecule. Hydrogen is an atom. And hydrogen bonds is an attraction between the polar molecules. So for example, in this picture below, you see how next to the O and the H, between them, the short line, the O has a negative. That weird symbol means slightly or a little bit. So O is a little bit negative and H is a little bit positive. So they attract each other and forms a hydrogen bond. Hydrogen bonds are much stronger than van der Waals forces.
All right, and for our last topic, we have Lewis structures, where Lewis is the name of a scientist who began using these structures. So Lewis structures are used to see the bonds and electrons for a chemical compound or a molecule.
Common Lewis structures use lines to show bonds and dots to show electrons. A single bond is 1 line, a double bond is 2 lines, and a triple bond is 3 lines. Extra electrons you can see are represented by the dots on this diagram. They are often called lone pairs if they come in twos. So you can see in the picture on the bottom right, on the O and the Cl, the chlorine and oxygen, there are lone pairs of electrons that are drawn using dots. And yeah, that is all we have for this week. Do you guys have any questions?
No.
No? Okay,
No
great.
question.
Oh, yes. Oh, no questions? Okay, then we can move on.
I have a question.
Oh, okay. Yes, what is your question?
How does a metallic bond form?
How does a metallic bond form?
Yes.
So, okay. Yeah, so let me reshare my screen. So a metallic bond forms between a positive charge. If you can see on the right, there are lots of positive ions, positive charges. And there are also a lot of negative electrons, negatively charged electrons. And so the positive and negative charges, they attract each other. They are pulled towards each other. And that is essentially the bond. That is what the metallic bond is. It's a lot of pluses being attracted to a lot of minuses.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. Any other questions? If not, then we can keep going. And if you have any other questions, you can ask it in the chat.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining today, and that's the end of our lesson. And if you have any question or concern, you can stay at the Zoom to ask it. If not, you can just leave. And thank you so much. See you at next Saturday morning. Thank you everyone. See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Bye. Have a good day.
Bye. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye. Do everyone here have a question? Okay, bye.